if you eat this food, you will be as bold as a Spider-Man,
Yes.
as bold as a Superman, and you can fight all the evil on the earth. And we used to believe it because at that time we thought that these characters were real.
So, hello everyone. We are back with the episode 2 of To Be Honest Talks with Vertocity, and we have a very wonderful person over here today, Miss Geetika Bangia, who is currently the head of PR and corporate relations at Stryker India Limited, and has been a part with big names of the industry, such as Philips. She was leading PR and communications over there in Philips as well. Before that, she used to work in Canon and GE as well, and of course, a part of General Motors India, right? So, ma'am, how are you feeling today?
Absolutely fine, Aman, and it gives me indeed pleasure and it's an honor to be on this particular platform with Vertocity. And it is always nice to connect with young people, with young aspirants who are looking at picking up some really great careers right at the onset of making a wonderful life ahead, a great professional career ahead. And just answering to your question, I'm feeling good today, just waiting for the rains in Delhi.
Right, ma'am. So, if ma'am, we have to start with this podcast, I'd like to ask, how many years has it been for you to be in this industry?
Okay, now that's an interesting one. And why did I say an interesting one? Because I suddenly realized when you asked me this question that in fact this year I'll be completing 20 years. That is 2 decades
20
of
years.
yes, and so it's been now, yes, 2 decades that I have been operating into this field, this exciting world of public relations and communications. So
So,
yes.
ma'am, what's the story behind this? How did you choose this PR and communications as a part of your career?
Mm. Okay, when if I now go back into the time and I turn the time back, so right from the beginning, I was this hardcore science student. And when I belong to that era where only science and engineering and
Right.
doctorate was the only career options available for us at that time. So obviously I could not pick up engineering because I was not interested in maths at all. So I thought that okay, biology is definitely the way out and it is easy to mug up. And so I very categorically picked up sciences with a medical background and I did my graduation from Delhi University from there. And so I was a hardcore science student with all those experiments and, the labs that you visit and you have
Right.
those hardcore experiments happening. So I was into that zone. Uh, and after completing my bachelor's from Delhi University, I just decided that I, I need to work and just got into the zone of communication. And I started my career with GE. That was way back, almost in 2002, 2001 at that time. And although communications as such was considered very unconventional at that time,
Right. Right.
nobody actually knew that what do you mean by communication. And if you talk in terms of simple English language, communication means to communicate. You just got to talk. So we did not get, no one understood the in depth meaning of that word communication. And even when you were working with companies at that time, there was a very low sense of acceptance towards having a communications as a division as a whole, or anyone who could write any kind of communication, whether it was for employees or whether it was for the external one. Very, very bleak acceptance was there. And I still went ahead because always I thought that I was a born communicator. and I opted for that because of the reasons I really enjoyed its various facets, especially the art of storytelling, which was not at that time, but definitely exists today in a big way. And it was my favorite. And of course, and I was always, amazed to see the impact that how a good story leaves on people's minds and even impacts or affects the decision making process or a decision making power of any individual. So looking back, if I go back into the time zone, I can very delightedly say that in my 2 decades of experience where I stand today, I have been able to build a compelling brand imagery through various modes of communication. So, whether it is my current role or the roles before this that I have got a chance to don them, I have all I it has always been very exciting for me to explore various industries, especially healthcare is the one which attracted me the most because the kind of you know the kind of zone that you get, the kind of a playground, that's the word I would like to use here, to create those holistic communications, strategy, campaigns to strengthen the brand positioning, both locally as well as globally. You really get that chance to do it. And that's been the story, behind that how I became a communicator, and that's where I am today.
Right. So to inform you guys as well, she has also received the award of 40 under 40 for the lead communicator as an influencer, right, ma'am? If I'm right.
Yes, uh, that was E4M, the PR&Corp Comm 40 under 40.
Yeah,
And then there was another one that was the Reputation Today, Young Turks, 40 under 40,
young Turks,
40
right,
Young
ma'am.
Turks. Yes.
So thinking about all of these years that you spent in the industry, do you, I mean, regret a single day of maybe taking this as a part of your career? Do you have any regrets for that? Or maybe you could have
No.
done something better in the past.
Um, Aman, if you really ask me, no regrets as such, absolutely no regrets, because PR and communications, when we talk about this world in totality as a whole,
Right,
this is one zone, this is one kind of profession that lets you speak, that lets you share your own voice, your opinion. And when you are associated with a brand, even if you are associated with a brand, or even if you are working as a freelancer in the communication persona or in the PR world, and it gives you that freedom to talk, to communicate, to cater to what your audience is wanting to listen to you, listen from you, what exactly the kind of content that needs to be created which suits your audience. So it really gives that platform to express. I think that's one thing. And I have always been a person who has been, you know, full of expression. So I don't think that apart from PR or communications, I wouldn't have taken up any other role. And this is one thing, Aman. This is one this profession, it makes me happy. It makes me feel satisfied that whatever I have done, I have been able to contribute towards bringing up, even if it's in bits and pieces, and building up this entire ecosystem of PR and communications. I feel extremely happy about that. So, absolutely no regrets.
that's very nice, ma'am. But again, moving on to the next question, ma'am. Uh, do you think that the current PR industry, or I'll sum it as PR and the communication part both? So when you first started your career into this, do you think that at that part of time it was a booming industry, or is it a booming industry right now?
Okay. So if I talk about probably, you know, you are wanting to say that how the industry looked like at that time
Yes,
and
ma'am.
how it
Sure.
has been,
Hmm.
changing.
Changed.
Uh, Absolutely. So I would like to start with this thing by saying that PR and corporate communication in whole, as an industry altogether, has been an ever evolving and an extremely exciting ground to operate. Things keep on coming, they keep on changing, and then new things keep on coming. So, unlike other aspects, whether I talk of marketing, whether I talk of advertising, so as practitioners of this particular domain, the primary job of a PR person or a corporate communication person is to promote the corporate identity for a brand that you're working, even even if you're not working for a brand, your own personal identity to the external world. And that can be done whether it is through various communication platforms. It can be through news, it can be through strategies, it can be through opinions about the corporation, about yourself, it can be through influencers. So it's an ever evolving job that I have seen it. And for the last, I would say, 10 years now, what PR was before 10 years, it was it was really, taken as that it is primarily talking about getting your news out in the newspaper. That was all about PR. And if I talk of corporate communications, okay, we have this particular news, not news, I would say, this particular communication. You just got to put it, correct the grammar, correct the English, the language needs to be right, and you just got to send it to the employees. So PR and communications was limited, very, very limited only to these two particular zones. However, in the last few years, or I would say about 9 or 10 years, with the boom of social media, that has turned the face of PR and corporate communications almost by 360 degrees.
Right.
And then further on, with the, and I would say this is very ironical, with the COVID era, because I would like to divide the eras into three phases.
Okay.
So one is BC, then we have DC, and then we have AC. So BC is definitely not
Before.
before Christ. So it is
Before
before
COVID.
COVID. Then
Yeah.
you have DC is during COVID,
During
and
COVID.
then AC is after
After
COVID.
COVID.
So before COVID, we were dependent upon, okay, we have the social media platforms. The communication uh, needs to be a, you got to have been connected with your you have a certain product, you need to send out the information to your audience about that product and have some more influence, influencers talking about it.
Right.
Again, it was limited to that. But with the COVID era coming up, it has become imperative, it has become absolutely most important to have a consistent communication with your stakeholders, with your employees, with your audience, with your customers, with your consumers.
Right.
There cannot be even a single break between the two. Whether it's whether it's your brand and your employee, the brand and the customer, or be it anyone. So there has to be a constant, consistent communication, the three C's. You cannot go, just breaking up the ties. And so that has been one of the biggest change that I have seen. And most importantly, Aman, content is the king. You have good content, you have a good platform, and you have your audience with you. So putting up the right customized content for your consumers and your customers at the through the right platform at the right time in the right language is the need of the hour and has to be followed by the brand, because if you need to have a very strong and a committed brand imagery, all these things need to be beaded in one thread.
Right.
That's the biggest change that I have seen in the last 4 years. So consistency in communication and that customized communication which suits your customer, which suits your consumer is very important these days. So that's earlier, Aman, it was more of a general mass communication that used to happen. You've picked up something, you just send it out that, this is FYI for you, this is the product that we've launched, this looks really nice, this is the price of the product, and you're done with it. Today, be it any brand, we are not selling products. That
We are
era
selling
is
stories,
over.
right?
We are selling the story behind that product. We are selling experiences behind that product. We are not selling the product. So we are not selling boxes. We are selling stories. And that's what
I
that's what your consumer wants to hear. They don't want to get into, because anything related to a product, they will say, I will go and see it on your website. It's available.
right.
I don't need it. You tell me that how your product will be beneficial to me, how will be it how it will be adding value to me and my family. So
Right.
that's where the consistency in communication comes.
That is a very well defined answer, I'll say. And I hope that everyone who is watching this podcast takes a note of all of the three C's that you mentioned. And ma'am, if I'll have to ask a funny question from you. So, is there any single particular funny incident which you can never forget, and it is related to your work experience, or maybe it could have happened in your office time or whenever you're working?
Okay. um, I will share this experience with you, and this was actually weird, funny, and this was weird and unexpected. But when we solved it, we were actually laughing that why did it happen. So I will not be able to mention the names and the brand here. So this was about more than 10 years back, more than a decade back, and I still remember that incident. So we had launched this particular product, and we had invited a whole lot of bunch of media journalists to one of the hotels, and we had also one of our celebrities. So who
Right.
was our brand ambassador? And so this brand ambassador of ours had to launch that product in front of the media, and that person was wearing a particular a costume which was absolutely appropriate at that time, and the product had to be launched. So our main focus was on the product, right? Because we as a brand, we were launching a product, and we had this 200 media standing clicking pictures. Everything went off well, absolutely went off well. And then suddenly, the next day, somewhere down the line, we get this news in one of the online publications, not even in a print or a newspaper. One of the web portals, they mention that the dress that was worn by the brand ambassador launching this product so and so is not as per the PETA guidelines. And we were like, okay. So this was extremely so funny at that time, that we were doing a firefighting and a crisis handling situation at that time to curb that how does this associate with a brand launching a product.
You're right.
So how we are not a costume brand. So we were not representing any clothing brand or any costume brand. We were representing another brand of a consumer durable category. So this is what happens. And we were doing a firefighting for that, which it said that the costume worn by the brand ambassador is not PETA appropriated. So it should have been changed
I,
because it had that costume had a design of some fish on that. So
so
it was so funny at that time. But being a PR representative for the brand, we had to curb that and, just go to that web portal and say that from where do you get this instance, and that how could you even put this news without even checking with us, which is not ethical.
right.
And so these are some, and there are various incidents that happen, but this is one which I exclusively remember. But
So
ultimately,
I
then
mean,
it was like it was down the, so people forgot about it. It was just, I think, about one portal had written about it.
so I guess that was a good example of how paparazzis used to be decades
Oh
ago.
yes, the media can pick up anything. It's just
Right,
that as a brand representative, as a brand imagery custodian, you have to be very careful, extremely careful about the verbiage that you're using, the
right,
messaging that you're using, the tonality of your messaging, and it needs to have that transparency of messaging with your audience, because it only and only adds to credibility of the brand, and that is very important in today's world.
right, ma'am. So, ma'am, as you mentioned earlier, that in the current era, I'll say, since you have seen this industry for 2 decades, so you categorize them into 3 phases, right? So, in one phase, you specifically mentioned that at this moment, we as maybe as companies, or we as founders, owners, whatever, we don't try to sell products. We try to sell stories, right?
Mhm.
So, my question would be over here is that did it take that long for maybe the founder or us to recognize that people have to be connected with the story rather than the product? Or I'll say, is it awakening or something?
Uh, okay, I will answer it this way, Aman. With the onset of these multiple interconnected devices that we have, got, and with the onset of extremely fast technology, the mobile era, which was about 20 years back when we actually held the mobile phones in our hand, that was a phenomenal and it was a big human revolution that happened,
Right,
right? So whatever we were consuming as a news to us, it was all through a word of mouth. It was all through, friends talking to each other, family members talking to each other, and whatever was available in the newspapers.
right,
Newspapers was the only medium that we had when we were in school and college. Newspaper was the only medium that we had, or the television. That's all.
right,
And with the onset of mobile and the connectivity that rose to almost 2 to 3 notches above at that time, it became that whatever, the consumer started becoming more aware that the kind of content consumption pattern, and we actually in the PR language we say that as a CCP, that's called the content consumption pattern by the consumer. So that CCP, it started rising above, wherein the consumer said that I have Google with me. I can just type down the name of the product and I can see the features of it, right? Because
right,
Google also had set in at almost at that time, or
right, right.
probably I think about 10, 13 years back. Correct me if I'm wrong there. So,
7, 8.
yeah. And so with that, information was available. It's just that the consumption pattern started changing. With the onset of the mobile, with the onset of the 2G, 3G, 4G, and now we are standing on the 5G. We're
5G.
just about to welcome the 5G.
Exactly.
So the consumer said, okay, I'm done with, you are giving me only about the product. What do I do about this? I know the product looks very nice. I have seen the product features on your website and I can see the MRP of the product. And as I mentioned earlier, with the increase in the awareness, with the onset of the technology, the consumer wanted more. You know, as we always say, ye dil mange more.
Yes.
So, so the consumer also said, I need more. What you have in extra for me, I want to know that. That's where the brands, the advertisers, the marketeers, the PR persons, and the communication people, we all started thinking about that now how to get that more. And with the onset and with the coming in of the millennial crowd, the generation X, Y,
Right.
Z's, they were very well informed. They did not want to fall in for a simple, a product brochure. Brochure is the word that I would like to use. They said, we don't want any brochures. Tell us how the other customer is experiencing about your product. They all wanted to hear is experience. They wanted to hear how did this product came into being? What was the ideology the brand used in building this product? What was that the brand took all the efforts in building up this product? We know the product, we don't want to know about it. Tell us the story behind the product. Tell us the story that how this product, and we being Indians, we are emotional about everything. We all know
Right.
that.
Right. Right.
So that emotional tangent, it started rising, from before it started rising. That I'll give you a very I'll give you a very simple example. Around 13 or 14 years back, I'm just talking about baby products,
Right.
right? So
Right.
baby products, we only had one brand, and everyone, we all have grown up with that brand. That
Johnson.
was like,
Johnson.
yeah, that was like Johnson and Johnson baby powder and baby creams, and they were pioneers. They were pioneers in that. There was no other brand to be there. But when with the multinationals stepping into the economies changing and the consumer becoming more aware, so there were a lot of other products that started seeping into the market and they started telling their story about the brand more from an emotional aspect. And that was the point where organic PR and communications, it started blooming up.
Hmm.
So there is a very thin line, Aman, between marketing and PR. Very thin line. So PR is all about telling your story. Advertising is all about selling your story. So
Right.
there's a difference,
Right.
right? Telling the story and selling the story.
Telling the story.
In
So,
advertising, you are putting money, you're selling it.
right.
But in
Right.
PR, you are going ahead and telling the story to your consumers. You're not selling it.
Yes. So, ma'am, can we conclude to one thing, which is that with the increase of CCP, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
and with the increase of number of channels, I'll say maybe
Yes.
omni-channel marketing or maybe increase of technology as well. Can we conclude that this era is the end of newspaper advertisements or TV advertisements? Can we say that?
Okay. Aman, I'll give you something really very interesting here. India is that country where still more than 60% of our population reads newspapers every day.
Right, right, ma'am.
And the reason behind this is our regional tier 2 and tier 3 towns, cities, and markets there. Even in metros, you will find a large section of people, even today, who still want to sit on a chair in the morning and sip a cup of tea and read the newspaper at least for 30 minutes.
That is my morning routine as well.
Yes. And till date, I am also one of them. I would not, I mean, in shots, reading news on in shots, this is like a very, very recent one. That can only be done if I just have like a 5 minute break for me. Just probably walking down to the stairs and or just walking in the park. I will just go through my mobile phone. But many people, they still crave for sitting down on a chair and reading the newspapers. So the era of newspapers is not out. As this is my personal view, and this is as per my experience that I would like to share. Newspapers is an unparalleled and an unmatched, you know, uh, the mode of communication we still have it today. And when you go down to tier two and tier three towns and cities in India, wherein you must have heard those names, that गांव की चौपाल पे आज भी वहां बैठकर अखबार पढ़ा जाता है. So people sit there and they read newspapers basking in the sun. So newspapers are there, the print is there, it will stay, it is going to be there. For me as a professional, definitely it's going to be staying there for long. It's not going to wipe out very soon. No, it won't. But yes, um, when we talk of the other point that you mentioned was the advertisements, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Advertisements, yes, it started with a very big boom when we had those beautiful advertisements every Saturday and Sunday. You remember when we used to have those supplements coming up when Delhi Times or
Right, ma'am.
Ascent, they were not there. So I'm talking like almost 15, 17 years back. That was the era wherein that special section on Sunday used to come. It was used to be full of this beautiful color paper, and we used to scan, we used to just flip the pages of that special section that we used to get.
That section actually used to have interesting news as well.
Exactly, the page 3 that started at that time, the Bollywood news, and something really interesting and some gossip going around in the world of Bollywood and all that. So that used to be those fun. And now even some researchers, they have they have come up with this thing that putting those advertisements when you are reading something on your mobile phone, that has also started coming to a plateau now. The consumer is getting bored of it. But when I'm reading something important, why am I getting these pop-ups of the advertisements here? So there was a phase in between where we used to love those, popping up advertisements,
Right, right,
right? You remember? And we used to really click on them, and it used to open the page of that particular advertisement that
right.
and used to take you to the link and take you to that particular website or whatever. Now that is also becoming stagnant. Consumer is not liking. So that's the point I wanted to raise again. The content consumption pattern again is changing. And I will go back to my point where I said that PR and communications, the marketing world, it's an ever evolving world.
Yes, right.
Changes will keep on coming, they will become stagnant, and then again changes will come. So
So,
it's
ma'am,
an ongoing wheel. Yeah.
there was this one more thing. So, is it the same for the TV advertisements as well? Because if we see in current era, so the television industry is completely changed. Now there are channels which will say that there is just only one break between a movie, or there is just a break for a minute or two, right? So,
Yeah,
do you think
correct.
that has gone down?
Um, that has gone down. I would not say that that has gone down, but there is another flip, another side to it. The TV industry, earlier we had just had the Doordarshan, the
Right.
news, Chitrahar. I'm sure you must have seen.
Yes,
I
yes,
don't know
ma'am.
if you have seen
Yes,
it
ma'am. I
in
have
your.
seen them.
Okay. So we used to like wait for Chitrahar and the Spider Man show, and there used to be ads in between at that time. And we used to love ads. I used to be the one who used to enjoy all those ads of Cadbury and Nirma washing powder and all that. I still remember them.
Ma'am, childhood ads, right?
Yes, the childhood
Nostalgia.
nostalgia. Yeah, absolutely. But with time, the amount of content that has been generated now, the amount of content that has gone up, that has been leaps and bounds. Earlier, the content, Aman, used to be limited, and the consumer used to consume that content repeatedly. And it was more of a, a simple life and a simple content that, okay, I have this content, this looks very nice, and I'm okay to consume it even 4 times. I can watch this advertisement even 5 times a day. It's okay for me. But with the onset of technology, with the increase in the number of communication platforms that we have now, and the latest to add to this is the OTT
Yep.
platforms, wherein you
OTT.
don't even have a single break in between. You have this continuous back to back episodes on web series that you have.
Right.
You have these continuous movies, without a single break, and the consumer is enjoying it because, again, the consumption pattern has changed. That I want more focused content. I do not want any breaks in between.
Right.
Yeah. So that's more of a focused approach that a consumer is looking at. I do not want any breaks. I know that the advertisements, in fact, now the consumer they find the ads boring to some extent, but nevertheless, there is still a section of our audience who is consuming this pattern. They still want to have those advertisements on the TV. They still
Right.
want to see those visually appealing advertisements and that connect with the brand, and they feel that, wow, I have this, or probably, my favorite celebrity is in this ad. I love to watch this. You still have people with that concept, with that mindset. So, Aman, it's a huge zone. It's a huge zone, and you will find different kinds of consumers with a different consumption pattern. So, technically, I would not say that you would not be able to generalize it for everyone. Everyone have their own choices, right? So,
Right.
so this is one ecosystem where you will find place for each and everything. So you will have
Exactly.
place for newspapers, you have place for OTTs, and you have place for TV advertisements. So I think it's a beautiful amalgamation, in especially in a country like ours where you have such a huge variation of consumers. So it's unbelievable. So that's how I feel. That's my point of view on this.
Like how this whole thing changed. I still remember a moment in my childhood. I used to be a fan of Jackie Chan. Ma'am. I mean,
Oh,
many people will relate to
okay.
him, right? So he used to be a brand ambassador of a brand. He of a motorbike actually. So
Okay.
back in that day, I actually forced my dad to buy that bike for himself. I
Just
don't know
because
why,
Jackie
but
Chan
yes,
is the brand.
yes, just because Jackie Chan was there. So I mean, that was the impact that it used to have on us, right? All of those ads that you mentioned, Nirma wala ad, right? We used to sing those songs for no reason for the whole day.
Yes. I used to love that music of that. When I was a kid, I'm talking about when I was a kid, I was, I think, probably in the third or the fourth standard. And I used to, just anxiously wait for Sunday evening, 5 o'clock. I still remember the time where this show of Spider Man used to come on Doordarshan. And I used to, like, finish my homework and everything, and I have to watch the show because it was engaging. That was the only content available at that time. Cartoon films and They were the only thing, the only source of entertainment. And we were happy to consume that content. But now, if you make a kid sit in front of a Netflix or a, probably an Amazon Prime video, there is umpteen number of cartoons and those storytelling cartoons that are happening wherein we as parents will get confused कि बच्चे को दिखाएं क्या इसमें से. Should it
Right.
be an ABCD cartoon or should it be a Peppa Pig or should it be Chota Bheem? It's never ending. The list is like so long. So it's all about the variety, the varsity of the content that you have. And so as a consumer, you need to pick up your choice and see the content that you want to see.
I mean, ma'am, the way it changed, like it changed from cable TV to satellite dish TVs, and now,
Yes.
ma'am, like it is like every household. It's like having OTT platform in your house is very common these days. Most of the families are having it. It's like
Most.
booming day by day.
It's all I mean it's on a huge boom, and thanks to COVID for that, because we could
Right.
not step out anywhere. And that was the actual boom of the OTT platforms, those 2 years. And and now with, of course, with the theaters opening back,
Mhm.
of course. And that also, if you see, whatever movie is releasing in the theaters in the next 4 to 6 weeks, it will be available for you to watch on an
Yes,
OTT
ma'am. That is
platform.
very common.
That has actually become a a tag along with the movie releasing in the theater.
Even a week ago only, I was thinking about to watch this movie, but I thought let it be. Even after a month, it's going to come on Netflix.
See, you said it yourself.
Right. So, ma'am, like there's this one more thing. So, as we were talking about, like we used to say this as a very good opportunity, or I'll say we used to feel very connected with that. Then we see that a famous actor or a famous superheroes are endorsing a brand, right? So, do you think that still works in current era because this current generation is totally different? I will say, right? So, do you think that still works right now?
Well, superheroes, okay, I'll tell you the difference. That's what I, as a person who has grown watching the superheroes, and definitely this is a very personal point of view here. Earlier, we were staying in that zone where we thought that yes, superheroes are there, right? But today's generation, they know that superheroes are imaginary. There are no superheroes.
Right.
It's all today existing in the world. Technology can create anything. It's all about the storytelling approach, which was not there earlier. So we had these imaginary figures that we had, which were given names, whether it's a Superman, whether it's a Spider-Man, whether it's be it anyone. But today we know the story behind it. That these are all fictional characters. These are, and probably these fictional characters, they have been put in, or probably they have been you know put in as a part of the content that a consumer wants to see, is primarily for the reason that he is one person who can do anything on the earth and will always fight against the bad, the evil, and the good will always win. So do you see the story behind it? So that storytelling approach did exist even 20 years back, but very limited consumption. Very limited consumption. But today, with technology, even a 2-year-old knows that, okay, I want to be a Batman, but I know Batman, where does he stay? I know that Batman belongs to which country. I know that Batman, these are the 5 or 6 things that he can do. So he knows everything about Batman. That kid, and whether it's a Cinderella, or be it any character, they know it very clearly about that character. that this character is only in stories. They don't exist anywhere. However, at the same time, we used to believe that yes, this character must be somewhere in the world existing.
Right.
That's the difference. That's the difference.
There were like products based on that. Like, if you will use this toothpaste, you'll become
Yes,
Spider-Man,
you will
Superman.
become
Different,
Spider-Man.
different
You
things.
will become a Superman. If you eat this food, you will be as bold as a Spider-Man.
Yes.
As bold as a Superman, and you can fight all the evil on the earth. And we used to believe it because at that time we thought that these characters were real. But today, the concept has changed, wherein the parents and the kids. I'm just picking up from this
Hmm.
example that you said. The parents and the kids themselves are so aware. The, the schools are providing that kind of an upgraded education, such a vast curriculum, such a vast education that they are providing, very focused education, wherein they say that it's not about being a Superman if you eat this. You will become a strong person because this particular thing which you're eating has minerals in it, has more of vitamins in it, has more of this particular thing or that particular thing, which is beneficial for your body and a healthy living. So, do you see the change in the conversation that has happened? So, this is a drastic change in the world of communications that has happened, where it is a more of focused communication that we are doing. It's not that just a masses or a mass-led communication that is being done. No, that zone is over. You have to be
Right, ma'am.
customized. You have to be direct. You have to be very concise, crisp, and to the point, so that your audience can relate to it. And when I say relate, the most important word that I would like to use here is your communication, your messaging to your audience needs to be relatable
Right.
so that they can understand.
So, like, ma'am, if you have to give suggestion or advice to people who are into this industry, maybe as a fresher, or who are just going to start their career into this, so what do you think that this should be the pathway for them to start their career into this in a perfect, I won't say perfect way, but in a better way, so that
Okay.
people who they
Hmm.
face many different difficulties, right? So they don't go through it, right? So what are
Okay.
the things that you like to suggest them?
Okay. Um, so for all the youngsters, all the young aspirants that who are wanting to pursue their career in the field of PR, in the field of communications, or probably content writing, I would like to say here is it's very important to study the various functions and practices that are existing in this industry right now. You have to have that eye for it because it's not that you will just generalize and just get into PR and corporate communications. You got to be very focused. Today, there is a plethora. There's a plethora of choices ranging from probably content writing, social media management for a brand. Then you have branding. You have corporate communications separate as a separate, ball game altogether. You have uh, parts like integrated marketing, which is a combination of both marketing and communications, online as well as offline. So there are many zones. There are many choices that you have it in front of you to pick it up. So always research first and then go ahead and pursue that particular line that you want to pick it up. What interests you, what brings in that kick in you and makes you happy. Always focus on that. What makes you happy, what makes you satisfied as a professional, that whatever you are doing, I'm happy doing it. There are one or two more important things that I would like to definitely mention here. Hone your writing skills if you are looking at pursuing a career in PR and communications. Because this is one thing that will set you apart from the other specialists or other communication specialists that are existing in the field. It is used in any form of communication. So practice, practice, and practice on your writing skills. It's imperative these days. Good content, good writing skills always have an edge over the others. Second, build a network around you. And you can only do that if you read, if you follow the news around you, the happenings around you, and you are keeping yourself up to date with whatever is happening. It's not necessary that you have to mug up everything and you just need to be on in depth and reading those almost uh, two-pager articles and all. No, even a synopsis about it that makes you aware that okay, if someone is asking me about this, at least an overview I should be having about that particular topic. Understand the writing styles. If, for example, if you are planning to start a career in PR and communications and you want to get into a PR agency, or you have got a chance to work with a brand directly, understand the requirement and the pulse of your audience. Understand various kinds of writing styles, languages, and not exactly languages. Obviously, you don't have to learn all the 26 or how many languages that we have in India. No, you don't have to do that. But be strong with your own language that you want to express yourself. It's very important. And last but not the least, never ever stop learning. Keep on adding to your knowledge basket. Keep on upskilling yourself. Keep on upgrading yourself. Do not stick to just one thing that, for example, okay, I have done a mass comm course from so and so university and I'm good to go and now I can take up lunch. Good. That is okay to take up lunch. That's very basic. That will help you to set the ground. But if you really want to do well in this field, you need to upgrade yourself. You need to keep on upskilling yourself. You need to keep on upgrading yourself. So always do that. And never ever shy away from being transparent. Transparency in all kind of communications and a consistency in communication. Always maintain that that's a good sign of a PR and a communication specialist.
That was, I think, a very wonderful advice for everyone who is watching over this podcast, and I hope that you take a note of this. So, one more question to put down, Mark, is that there might be few new founders and co-founders as well, right? So, do you have any advice for them to, you know, to maybe how they should create a story for themselves to make their product or service more connectable with for people who would be, maybe consuming them at some later stage, right? So, do you have any advice for them how to brainstorm a good story for their product or service?
Okay. Um, very. This is very important and a very interesting question. Always keep the customer or the consumer at the center of whatever strategy that you are building up. That should be the core. And I myself, as a communications person, I always follow the golden circle. So when you have kept the customer centricity as your core value, whatever business that you are getting into, right? Whether you are, you know, starting up a new brand, a clothing brand, be it anything, be it anything, you got to think like a customer, not the head or the founder of that particular startup. No. Your entire strategy, your entire communication strategy, your entire marketing strategy, your connect strategy has to be around your customer. You got to think like a customer, that if I was the customer of this particular brand for which I am the founder on the other side, how would I like to see this brand telling me the story? Putting that first thing in your mind will help you to create those, lines of creating campaigns around it, communication around it. And as I said earlier, always follow the golden circle. We do the biggest mistake when we are working on campaigns. We start with, what are we doing? How are we going to do this? And in the end, we realize, why did we do that?
Right.
On the contrary, it needs to be on the others. It needs to be on the reversal side. That's what the golden circle says.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
need to define the why first. Why are we going to do this? Why is this campaign important? Why is this PR or this article important? Why is this communication important? Right? And then jump onto how and what. So that is, one of the points that I wanted to share, or one of the suggestions that I would like to give, that please, customer centricity, and always have an answer to the why that you want to do this. I think that will help you sail very smoothly and for a much longer duration of time, and will help you to build that long term relationship with all your stakeholders, internal, external, employees, customers, consumers, media, be it anyone. Credibility and transparency. These are the two words one should always remember when you are, you know, working for a brand. You are whether founder of a brand, founder of a startup, whoever. These are some of the things that I truly believe in as a professional.
Right, ma'am. Right. I hope that this help all of the startup founders and co-founders as well. And since you mentioned, ma'am, Golden Circle, I believe, ma'am, it has been an important part of my life as well, because I had been into marketing since a very long time. And I mean, not a very long time, but yes, for me, for like it's like 5 or 6 years. So I feel that Golden Circle, I mean, proving, or ma'am, I'll say writing down points where you have to, think that what, why, how you should be doing it for the customer. That is very important to be in this,
Yes.
specific industry of marketing, PR, and communications, right? So, with this keeping in mind, ma'am, this PR and communication specifically. So, I'll say, I mean, if I have to ask you, do you think that it is very different than other, I'll say, other European countries or American countries, or is it the same everywhere? So, I mean, the strategies, does it work everywhere the same, or is it the same thing everywhere? Is it the different thing?
See, basic about PR and communications, it remains the same,
Right,
because you are talking, you are connecting with your consumer. So
right.
whether it is India, whether it is Europe, whether it is America, whether it is,
Hmm.
be it any corner of the world, the baseline remains the same, because you are connecting with your audience, you are connecting with your consumer. Yes, with different cultures, with different consumer mindsets, the the communication standpoints can change, because you got to adapt to the changing environment, the changing culture, because every country has their own culture. Every country has their own set of audience. They have a different pulse. They have a different mindset. So the most important thing, Aman, is to catch the pulse of your audience. And that can be done with regular, consistent connects with your audience. So it would not be fair to say that, Europe has a different communication style, or India has a different communication style. Europe is a different market altogether. India is a very mass market, wherein you have variety of, people out here with different kinds of mindsets and different kinds of we have various income groups
Right.
that are operational here, and a lot of there is a huge difference in the economies of the Western world, Eastern world. So all these things, they do impact. They definitely impact. But when you talk about communication from a customer centricity point, it remains the same.
Right, ma'am.
Because whether it is London, whether it is New Jersey, whether it is Delhi, you are communicating with your consumer. You want your product to be sold, you want your story to be told, and the way you tell it, the way you convey it to your consumer, that's where the most important thing comes in. That is the consistency of communication.
Exactly right, ma'am. So, ma'am, in your 2 decades of this industry, you might have seen a lot of companies going up, lot of companies going down, right? So, I'll be very specific about startups only. And let's not talk about big brands. So, ma'am, do you, if according to if I have to ask, that what is the common mistakes that startup founders make while they are in the maybe let's say growth phase of the startup? So, what are the common mistakes according to you?
Um, I will take it up. I'll take this question as a more, you know, in a generalized form. That what are some of the common mistakes, whether it is a startup or
Right.
whether it is any fresher, while starting their career or, starting a new company. Um, and this is, I have seen quite common. The people who are, of course, because when you are putting in so much of hard work, you become very eager and excited to so. And that is one thing which most of the times it it becomes not, I would not use the word hindrance. I would say that it sometimes it can backfire, becoming too much eager, becoming too much excited, and don't rush. You got to be patient because there are certain, you know, guidelines that you have to keep in mind while you are sharing any kind of news with other people, whether that person is a PR fresher, communication fresher, or even from that standpoint that a person is wanting to, begin with a startup of his own. Wait, have patience, study all the points very carefully, analyze all the pros and cons that you can think of, that if this particular thing I'm going ahead and doing it, or probably if I have planned this particular campaign or I want to go ahead and share this news with someone, positives, yes, one, two, three, this will happen to me. What could happen if this does not go well, if this does not go down well with my audience or with my consumer? You got to be prepared for that. In addition to this, always play in addition to this, always exercise the pitch in your head. For example, if you are a part or you are a founder of a startup, I'm sure that you must be looking for investors everywhere because you need funding for your startup. Always exercise that pitch in your head and play the devil's advocate. This will always prepare you for the unanswered queries, that may arise, because there will be queries when you will be sitting in front of few people, giving a presentation, giving out your own messaging. And always remember, you have to be patient, you have to be resilient, and you have to be adaptive. All days are not rosy days. There
Right.
will be days where things will backfire on you. It will. So be adaptive, be very balanced, have a very balanced approach towards your business, have a very balanced approach towards your job, have a very balanced approach that There are good days and there are bad days. But be prepared for the bad days. Always in your brain. Think of, and this is, I always give this as a piece of suggestion or an advice or whatever you say. So, whenever I'm talking to students, whenever I'm giving sessions to MBA students and all, I always tell them that the more adaptive you become, the more easy it becomes for you to sail through even the worst of the situations. And a true PR person will never ever rely on plan A. A true PR and a comms professional will always have plan A, plan B, and plan C. So even if plan A or plan B fails, you are ready with plan C. That's how you look at it. And always be prepared, be calm, be resilient, and just have faith and confidence in whatever you are doing. Because the more you are you, the more acceptable you will be becoming to the audience whom you're talking to. That's what I feel.
Right, ma'am. I mean, that was a really very wonderful advice. Even I jotted down a few points in my mind as well. But yeah, I mean, that's like very true because all of the days are not rosy, as you mentioned, right? There have to be some days where you'll have to walk on thorns, right?
Yeah.
And the perfect example that you gave me of having the devil's attitude, right? While going for presentations, pitch decks, whatever it is.
Whatever.
So yes, yes, ma'am.
So, and in fact, if you have bad days, which everyone has bad days, learn from them. Learn from them. Pick up the points from there that what went wrong there so that I do not repeat it and I take it as a learning. So always learn from them. You should not be cribbing about it that why did I have such a bad day? It's okay. It's fine. It's a part of your struggle. It's a part of your career. It's a part of your professional life. So take it with a pinch of salt. Learn and move on.
So, ma'am, I think, ma'am, this podcast was very informational for everyone who was watching this. And to be very honest, I actually got to learn a lot from you regarding PR communication. Because I mean, to be very honest, I had a very different perspective about PR and communications. I mean,
Oh,
yes, I
okay.
had being in a marketing department, you have to go through a
Right.
lot of things. So there's always been conflict between PR and marketing, a lot of things, right? They think this story is right, but the marketing think this story is right. So
Yes,
again, yes,
yes.
ma'am. So I hope that everyone got to learn a lot from you. And thank you very much for being a part of this podcast. And I hope that if people would try, following you on LinkedIn, that would be a big follow, right? They can get to learn a lot from you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Aman, for inviting me. And it was indeed a pleasure interacting with you, sharing my little pieces of, my experiences and whatever knowledge that I have been able to gather over the last so many years. And even if one person out of the audience is able to capture and probably apply it or inculcate that into their professional life, I would be more than happy. And if anyone would like to reach out to me to, have some more conversations around it, more than happy to do that. And thank you so much. Thanks a lot once again for inviting me to this platform. So thank you so much.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you.